I ended up in gangs, in shootouts, in stabbings, and doing over half a decade in the worst prison. I grew up in an environment where the connotation with being gay was negative. So at school, socially, anything negative was you'd put gay on the end of it. Oh, if you made a mistake, oh that's gay. If you fell over, oh that's gay. If you did badly on the test at school, that's gay. If you missed a shot at soccer or football, that's gay. So it was always gay slurs and mocking being gay and homosexuality. So I kind of hated the fact that I was that. I can never be myself. So I'm going to basically play this character. I'm going to mask who I am, and I'm going to take out my anger on everyone else. I would be out every weekend fighting anyone that was in my vicinity. And yeah, and things gradually got more serious and more serious. I just made the decision, this is kind of going to be my way out. There's like a form of, this is going to be my suicide in a way, to kind of check out of life.
Hi, this is Mike Balaban. Welcome to another episode of Bammer and Me, my podcast series that takes guests from all over the world who are LGBTQ and allied and probes into their lives because most of them have had spectacular lives that are worth shouting about. Today's guest is Jacob Butchoff, who is British, 35-year-old, Jewish, um, and has a really interesting background, kind of fascinating one with a lot of, it's kind of a journey of self-discovery and redemption, which we're going to probe further today. So Jacob's background was he was adopted from Paraguay in South America at several months old in 1981 by 40-year-old childless Jewish British parents in a London suburb. And Jacob always felt different because of his Latino ethnicity, because the fact that he was Jewish, which was a minority even in the UK, and because he had been adopted. And all of those differences left him with a deep sense that he was different from everybody else. In addition to those differences, he had another subterranean one, which he couldn't even acknowledge to himself early on, and that was that he was deeply attracted to other boys. So I'd like to have us ask you, Jacob, to kind of take us through what it was like growing up in those circumstances, and we'll proceed through the rest of your life after that.
Okay. First of all, hi, Micah. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. Um, First of all, I was adopted in 91. I don't want you adding 10 years to me. So, yeah, I was adopted in 1991. And so you asked me what was my life growing up from the initial stages. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was adopted by two great people, as you said, Jewish, um, middle-aged couple, raised in Northwest London, which was like a privileged area. I went to a really good school, with great people. I made some friends, a lot of which I'm still friends with to today. And at the beginning, like everything was great. It was like the idyllic, picturesque, storybook kind of upbringing, really. I couldn't say anything wasn't great, but um I found from as early as I can really recall, maybe six, seven, feeling different in every kind of way, right? Being adopted, an only child, found that quite challenging, and just dealing with identity and realizing early on in an all boys school, um, I'm attracted to these, some of which are my friends, or some which are supposed to be my friends and my peers. And yeah, early on, I really struggled with that. And in the environment I was in growing up, I didn't feel I had anyone to talk to. I didn't feel I had anyone to reach out to. Um, and yeah, I found it incredibly difficult, which ended up leading to all the stuff we're going to go into.
So, you dealt with your difference and your attractions to boys manifested themselves inside you, but you couldn't let anybody else know.
Yeah.
I'm coming a little bit confused about your journey in your late 13th. Did you graduate from high school?
Okay, so what in the UK, so it's primary school, secondary school, and then after secondary school, you can either go to college from like 16 to 18, and then you go to university, which is like your college, right?
Right.
So I ended up, I don't know if you want to skip ahead, but I ended up in a lot of trouble from 14, 15 onwards. So by the time my peers and my friends were in university around 18, I was already where I ended up. So I don't know
So,
if you want to
want to
skip
take
ahead.
us through the trouble you got into and
Yeah, okay.
how you think that manifested itself? What was that
Yeah,
was driving
I
you?
think, yeah, I think that the goal of today, obviously we've discussed this off camera, is to try and reach out to a lot of people, whether gay or LGBTQ or not, right? Who are dealing with or have dealt with or in the midst of dealing with kind of their own personal storm, right? With their identity and fear and shame of whatever they are, what they're not, right? If they feel alone. And so it's important to kind of go into the feelings that I felt and what happened because of those feelings, right? So I can't speak for every closeted gay guy because that wouldn't be fair, all right? Because I can only speak on how I dealt with, how I felt, right? So um, I felt I dealt with it fine from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's not, you can't really do anything about any of those feelings you've got, right? Never told anyone, but then you get to 13, 14, and social pressures evolve. And now me and my friends and people that age, you're going out, you're going to house parties, you're mixing with other groups of friends from schools, girls, boys, and popularity comes into it, and all the normal stuff that teenagers go through. And as the days went past, I just remember this deep anger built in me day by day from about 13. um because I felt to myself, okay, I know I can never be myself. That's how I remember the feeling of I can never be myself. So I need to use this anger to hide who I am, basically. So I'm going to basically use it against the world.
So the
So
anger was anger at not being able to be yourself.
I think it was anger at being myself. I think initially I felt shame about being gay. And I grew up in an environment where anything the connotation with being gay was negative. So at school, socially, anything negative was you'd put gay on the end of it. Oh, if you made a mistake, oh, that's gay. If you fell over, oh, that's gay. If you did badly on a test at school, that's gay. If you missed a shot at soccer or football, that's gay. So it was always gay slurs and mocking being gay and homosexuality. So I kind of hated the fact that I was that, right? And I felt that, yeah, I felt anger building up every single day, and I felt resentment to my friends around me that I felt I couldn't tell because I feel they reject me. I felt resentment to my parents for adopting me into a community and a life that, as great as it was in terms of the education opportunities, I felt I couldn't be myself. So I felt trapped and I felt suffocated every single day. Um, and yeah, it manifested itself, and I made the decision, okay, I'm going to basically play this character, I'm going to mask who I am, and I'm going to take out my anger on everyone else, which, is obviously a horrendous thing. And to this day, I kind of, try and work on that and the guilt and all those feelings that come along with the decisions I made, you
So
know.
what were the manifestations of that anger? Or did you get into fights? Did you, how did you display it?
I would start fights that didn't exist. So I would antagonize situations to attack people with weapons from 14. I got expelled 3, 4 times from no suspended, sorry, which means in the UK you basically have to go home for a week and then you're allowed back, right? So for fighting, I had a fight with the chef at school. I was 15 and walked into the kitchen at this big private school and had a fight with the chef, which was unheard of at that school. You know, the chef was a 45-year-old man. Um, and he said the comments of me and my friend, and I just walked into the kitchen and picked up a frying pan, and we had like a full-on fight, which they couldn't, the teachers just couldn't believe. Apparently, they still joke about that to this day, which is quite funny. But that was one of the less serious things. But I would be out every weekend fighting anyone that was in my vicinity. Um, I was kind of losing grip on things at home. And yeah, and things gradually got more serious and more serious.
Why don't we share with the audience the situation you found yourself in, dating that young woman and leading to the encounter and
Yeah,
altercation with the guy who went out
yeah,
with her?
Yeah, I think it's important to give background. I think um I didn't just one day wake up and then go straight into this situation we're going to cover. It was, as I tried to say before, it was like a day by day progression, of I think growing up in a privileged environment, it gave me a kind of a, a protective blanket in a way of security that a lot of people don't get, which I'm very, very, was very fortunate to have, in terms of I could get in a fight and I could get bailed out, so to speak, by my dad, who could come and pick me up, or I could still have a place, a home to go to. But a lot of kids growing up, they get into trouble and they might not necessarily have family there to support them and to give them another chance, right?
You were able to forestall or avoid the repercussions of your behavior for a long time because of your
yeah,
privileged, position. But
yes, yeah,
ultimately you paid a price.
No, I paid a huge. We'll get to it. I paid an incredible price. Me and my family still pay it.
Yeah.
um,
But it's important to say that I did have a loving home to go to. So I think it's easier to get into a fight and knowing that you can come home to a nice house and loving parents, right? Whereas I think half of the problem and the issue for facing many kids, a lot of which I met along the way, which we'll discuss. A lot of these kids didn't have the two-parent household and the close community that I had, right? So that makes it even more difficult when you do get into trouble. If you've got nothing, no security to fall back on, that makes it very difficult.
Well,
um,
you were very fortunate, but you really tried their patience.
Oh, yeah, yeah, incredibly fortunate. And yeah, we'll, as I said, we'll get on to how much I tried their patience, right? And ultimately, nothing could really derail me from the path that I was on and where I was going. But yeah, the background of what happened was I had got into a lot of situations leading up to the um what you said, and I had been arrested for possession of a firearm, a gun. At 15, I had been stabbed 8 times. I was in and out of gangs activity from 15, 16, 17, 18. Um, I was, yeah, I was basically on like a warpath. I was just incredibly angry. I was masking everything. Everything I was like, okay, I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to cover myself with tattoos. I'm going to walk different, talk different to what I feel like I am and how I naturally talk and present myself. And I used to look at it like if I got stabbed, I remember when I got stabbed and I said to the doctor in the hospital, am I going to have a big scar? And he said, why would you care about that? You want to know if you're all right, surely the first thing. And all I cared about is, well, if I'm going to have a big scar, it'll look really cool and it'll make me look tougher. And I can cloak, who I really am more and more. So that's giving a bit of background to how I end up at where I end up. And yeah, so I was dating this girl, which also caused a lot of internal, anger. You having relationships with girls,
You're lying to her and to the world, trying to be.
and I'm lying to myself. And yeah, there's a lot of self-hate, a lot of resentment towards myself, towards her, which yeah. And I was in a relationship with this girl who was a lovely girl, great family, incredible people. And I I was with her at 15, and I got a phone call from her ex-boyfriend when I was 15. And I didn't know, I was aware of who he was, but I'd never met him. We weren't, we didn't have a friendship or a relationship of any kind. And he phoned me and basically said a lot of stuff about my family and my adoption and threatened me and so forth. And as I said, at that age, I was looking for trouble. So if someone came to me with trouble, then I would embrace it heads on because it was what I wanted. And, I think it's important to state the extent of my self-hatred. Most people in life, a lot of my friends, a lot of people I've come across in life comes to them with trouble, and they get involved in things, they make decisions, some of them wrong, and they have to live with the consequences. I searched for it because of how I felt inside, about being gay, mainly, and my fear.
So what happened with her?
Yeah, so as I said, I got the phone call from the guy, and I went immediately. I said, "Where are you?" Found out where he was. I went to see him. This was when I was 15, and we got to an altercation.
Why did he call you?
Because I was the boyfriend, he was the ex-boyfriend, right? So he was just jealous and angry, which is understandable, right? We're all young. When we're 15 at this point, so I fully get how we all can be when we're young. And anyway, he phoned me, and I went to meet him. We had an altercation. He ended up in hospital. Um, I beat him quite badly on that occasion, and this is when we're 15. This is before the situation we're going to get to. And I basically was arrested that night for assault, and spent 6 months going back and forth to the police station, writing statements and going through the procedure when you get arrested. And then one day, about 6, 7 months after that fight, I got a letter through the door saying the case has been dropped. The defendant's dropped all charges. So that was an incredible relief. And then I found out that he had left the country. His family had moved him because he was also involved in, a lot of trouble, and they'd moved him to America to get him out of trouble. So he wasn't there to prosecute, and the case was dropped. That was at 15. My life carried on. I was in more and more trouble. And that time I ended up getting expelled from school, got involved in lots of situations with gangs and stuff. And then 3 years later, at 18, he returns from America. I'm still with the girl I was with, in a relationship with her.
He was dating her then, or you
No,
were?
so I was still dating her. He's come
Right.
back. He's come back from America, and they've slept together. Right. So, um, yeah. So at that time, just to give it context of my reaction, I was ready to basically throw in the towel on my life already. And what I mean by that is I used to have this picture in my head that I've described to a few close friends. Um, it's quite difficult to even talk about, really. Um, I used to lie in my bed at night and I used to say, I don't have it in me to kill myself, but I used to picture a switch. If there was an imaginary switch and I could just, like a light switch, I could just click it. If I could do that and everything would come to an end, that's what I would do. That's what I used to wish for every day. So at that period of my life, I was so I'm 18 then. I'm with this girl. I'm obviously unhappy. I've never been with a guy, never been in love at that point. I'm expelled from school, an incredible school, great school. My future's not looking great. I'm in a lot of trouble, and I find out from my girlfriend she's basically slept with the guy who I had the previous, encounter with. And I just made the decision, this is kind of going to be my way out. It's like a form of, this is going to be my suicide in a way, to kind of check out of life. So I, arranged to meet him on the premise of, I want to make sure that he's not worried. I want to apologize to him. I want to submit to him. I want to tell him that I'm not going to do anything and I'm sorry for what happened in the past, etc., which was all nonsense, all lies, obviously. It was to lure him to a place where I could then freely attack him. So I met him at a restaurant, in a local well-known restaurant, at like 8:30, 9 o'clock it must have been. Sat with him for about an hour, face to face at dinner, talking to him, um, apologizing for the past, and you know, trying to look as weak, as submissive as possible, and then excused myself when I felt that he was completely comfortable. Excused myself, went to the toilet. I had taken a knife to the meeting, to the restaurant, splashed myself face with water, and walked out of the toilet. And my plan, remember at the time, was to kind of go behind him and kind of scar his face. And as I went behind him, and the reason why I did it in a public place was to make sure that I was arrested, and right, which sounds, and down the line when ended up where I ended up, and I spoke to people, people can wrap their head around that, because most people do things and try get away with them. Where I was one of the only people, if not the only person that I met where I ended up, that kind of, the whole point was to get caught so I could, exit stage in life. So I um went up behind him, tried to um lunge at him with the knife, and he clocked me at the corner of his eye, and we wrestled. And then the wrestling on the floor, if you can imagine and picture the scene, it's 9 o'clock, 8:30 at night. There's 90 people in the restaurant. People are running, screaming, running for the door, hiding under tables. And he ended up being stabbed in the shoulder and the back 3 times, and the ear. Um, and I staggered out the restaurant. And as I was walking down the road, and I was lots of blood everywhere, all police cars were coming from all angles. They jumped out at me and arrested me. And that was in September 2010. And from that moment, I didn't see the outside world for 6 years. I was 18, just turned 19. So yeah, that was
So
that situation.
mission accomplished.
You could put it like that, but yeah, incredibly lucky that he didn't die. Not for my sake, for obviously for his sake, firstly. And incredibly lucky that I didn't completely ruin many lives, that night, mine, his, and our families. But yeah, from then I ended up in some of the worst, most notorious prisons in this country, in the UK, for 6 years. And
Initially, you were given a sentence that you told me about. I forget. You can tell me the name, which was indefinite.
no, so it wasn't initially. That was my sentence. My sentence was indefinite. It's been abolished now, my sentence, for being inhumane. So the government's abolished it, which I agree with, not just because I had it. It's because you should, if you commit a crime like I did, you deserve to be punished. You deserve to go to prison. The sentence that they gave me was called IPP, which basically means it's indeterminate for public protection. So what that means, you don't get a release date. So most all prisoners, if you watch, prison movies, or anything about, going to prison, you get given a sentence. Say you get 10 years. So you go to prison the 1st of January 1990, and okay, 10 years later, the 1st of January, 10 years later, okay, I'm getting out. So you mark it on your wall or whatever it is, and day by day, okay, I've got to get through this. I got a sentence, you don't get a release date. I got a minimum of 3.5 years, and then you apply to get out. So I was with people that got 2 years IPP, and they did 20 years, because it's the discretion of the government if you get out. So they could get your paper, read it, and say no, right? So you have to take courses, you have to apply to parole boards when there's backlogs in the prison system, which there's a lot,
Luck out and only serve 6 years.
Well,
I don't say I lucked out. It's nearly double. It's nearly double what I got. But look, all in all, I think you're probably right. I think I was fortunate that I remember the first day that I went to prison. I said to the prison officer, goes, "So what did you get, like your sentence?" I said, "Oh, I got IPP." And he goes, "Do you want a bit of advice?" I said, "Yeah, please." And he said, "Be really, really bad for the first year and a half, 2 years, and then change." I said, "So you're the officer and you're telling me to get in loads of trouble?" He said, "Yeah, if you ever want to get out, because when I go for my parole boards, if I've been good the whole time, they know it's fake. They know it's an act, right? They know it's bullshit, because on the Monday, I stabbed someone. So if I on the Tuesday suddenly I've been good, like an angel, for all those years, they know that's not me, because how could I do that crime on a Monday and suddenly come into prison and be an angel? What he said, and which was so true, is they want to see change. They know you're not going to be perfect because you're in a prison with other people who are not angels either. So you show the behavior that you proved with your crime, and then you change. So there's an arc.
so I did.
I want to accelerate a little bit only because we're at a half hour and I want to make sure we don't go to an hour and a half.
Of course,
So tell me a little bit about what prison was like, and then we can move on to what it was like when you got out.
Okay. Prison was. I think that so many people have asked me over the years what it was like. I think the human beings adapt very quickly. And I wasn't a fish out of water. I went in when I was 18, and I've been getting in fights, as we covered, and all this, for 4 or 5 years previously. So I wasn't a stranger to violence, and the environment of violence. And as I said, I had 4 or 5 years previously to go into prison that I was involved in stuff, right? A lot of stuff we covered. So
So you
I
didn't
think,
have a
as I
real
said,
problem taking care of yourself in those
no. So
circumstances.
yeah. So to answer your question is, the hardest thing is not for me. It's not the isolation. You learn very quickly. You adapt. You're out yourself 2 3 hours a day. The rest you're in your cell. You watch movies. You sleep. You eat. You do press ups. You read. You watch the TV as much as you can, and you pass the days. What's difficult is the people. You're around a lot of, you're in a bit, it's basically like being in a huge house, and every other room you might have some people you get on with. And I'm very fortunate. I had some people that to this day are good friends of mine and brothers to me, good people, that have changed their lives. But there's a lot of rapists, pedophiles, serial killers, mass murderers, and you have to navigate your way through it. I had some difficult times in there in terms of confrontations that I got through, but I think everyone goes through that. And yeah, I think the hardest thing was my family. I think anytime I think about my mum and dad, it makes you vulnerable emotionally. And that hurt me because I knew they were hurting. And that was the hardest thing for me, really.
As I recall, you told me that they wrote you so often and visited every week, right?
Yeah, so I'm quite conscious of time, but I'll give you a little story quickly about what you said that I think is nice. Is one day one of the prison officers sat on my bed. He came, he's like, Butchoff, can I have a word with you? I said, yeah, of course. He was a really good officer. And he sat on my bed and he said to me, he said, I've worked in the prison system for 35 years. And he said, I've never seen a family be so supportive as your family, in terms of my mum and dad were 65 then, 65, 66, and they would drive once a week, which was the maximum you're allowed, 4 hours to Birmingham to visit me for an hour in a prison, which they obviously were not used to. They found that very difficult. They would send me, what I mean, boxes and reams of binders of letters and, you know, stuff and printed stuff about Arsenal and movies and football and music and history and anything that they could, anything that the prison would allow me to get to help my time, they would send. Especially my dad, who was incredible with that. And that made a huge difference. He sent me posters that I put all over my, the cell of Arsenal players and movie stars. So that was great. And my family were incredibly supportive.
through that whole
That
time.
leads me to the next logical question. If your life to that point had been propelled by anger,
Yeah.
now you're in a situation where there's lots of anger and lots of potential violence. How did you curb your anger there or deal with it?
I wasn't angry there. It was the only place I wasn't angry there because I was around people that had 30 years to serve, 40 years to serve. I was in there. You don't have time to wallow in your own self-pity.
But
You got to deal.
you were still dealing with the suppression of attractions to people of the same sex.
But you don't have time to think about that. You got to look after you got to watch your back. You
Right.
got to fight for you got to fight for your life in there. People died in there. Like people got murdered where I was. People killed themselves, weekly where I was. There wasn't, oh, I got to hide. There was 10 other things
Right.
that I needed to make sure, okay, how are my parents on the outside? How am I going to make sure that someone doesn't stab me in my neck today? And how am I going to make sure we have, you're navigating other stuff in there.
You might say that for you, those 6 years were perhaps the easiest you had experienced and would end up being easier than what you had to deal with when you got out.
I agree. No, the 100% it was easier because you had a singular focus. I need to get out. I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. I'm going to study. I'm going to become focused. I'm going to become strong physically. I got in the best shape of my life.
So then you got
And
out, and what happened? How did that happen?
well, I got out in 2016. I I had never had, though I was in prison from 18 to 25, 26, just nearly 26. So I had lost the years of adulthood when you transition to adulthood of knowing, getting a job, knowing how to pay bills, you're paying for your car, paying for rent and etc. And I got out of prison and I really lost myself for, I'd say 4 or 5 years, which were the worst of my life. I got kind of built I built up all these dreams and aspirations, right? When you're in prison, because you just sit there and you lie to yourself. Or maybe you don't lie to yourself. Maybe you genuinely think, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go out there and I'm going to take the world by the balls, and I'm going to be all these incredible things.
Yeah, but then you get
Um,
out and you don't have a framework for doing that, right?
You don't have the framework, you don't have the tools, no one teaches you, and look, my parents are incredible people. My father never he never taught me how to exist in the world as an adult. And even maybe I took away the opportunity for him to do so when I was in prison. So I didn't know where to start when I got out. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do for a work, for a career. I knew I always wanted to help people, didn't know how to go about it. I saw all my friends that I had left behind now in these jobs, solicitors and lawyers and estate agents and property and recruitment, and they've been, in the career 5 years and climbing up the ladder, and I've come out and I don't know what to do. I don't have money. um
So what did you
I was
do?
very,
I moved in with a girl immediately, which sounds crazy. It is crazy looking back on it. You think after all those years, maybe there'd be a bit of common sense or like learn. But I moved in with a girl, a lovely girl, for a year, which was absolutely awful. She basically paid the rent, right, while I was looking for work, saying every day, I'm going to get the best job. Don't worry, don't worry. And that was an absolute nightmare. And she left, and I basically got into drugs really badly, isolated myself from everyone. The problem is, people were already very wary of me when was released, but they were willing to give me a second chance because I was their childhood friend and they loved me, right? They thought, okay, this could be incredible. He could get out and change his life. Now they're seeing me get out of prison, get on drugs, become even worse in some aspects than I was before. So people were really done with me.
so I
Did you get
lost a
involved? Did you
lot
get
of,
involved with gangs?
Yeah, I got involved in. There was a period of time when I was selling drugs, was backing gangs, doing drugs, involved in robberies. Basically, where I left off from before I went in, but worse.
So then how
and
long did that period last? And help me figure out what it was that enabled you to start to move towards some productive purpose.
Um, I I lost two of my best friends in that time. They were murdered, um, and one of them, Carlton, was killed on the week I was released. He was one of the best friends I've ever had in my life, like a brother. And my other very, very, very close friend, Max, was killed so 4 years later. So the period of time when I was, in a really bad space, I was robbing drug dealers, I was carrying guns, I was involved in a lot of stuff, selling hard drugs, trying to make money where I could, doing whatever I could. I didn't care. And I was hooked on drugs, which is really dangerous because you're kind of feeding a habit, right? Which makes you more reckless and puts you in more dangerous situations. But I lost my friend at the beginning of that journey when I got out. And then when Max got killed, I was in the process of that time. I had started to realize what I wanted in life in terms of deep down, all I've ever wanted to do is help people. And
Which,
the
you
deeper I
told
went,
me, that you had this desire to help and this
always,
generosity of spirit all during the time when you were behaving
always.
exactly the opposite.
yeah, so I've wanted to help people. I'm incredibly soft person. I'm not tough at all. Um, I used to get involved in all the situations I used to get involved in. I used to describe it like I was closing my eyes and kind of going to do it for cowardly reasons. I was never a tough guy. genuinely.
And
you certainly had an odd way of acting for somebody that's soft, you know.
no,
No, because look, I think the toughest things that I did was how I was in prison was, it wasn't credit to me, it was any human being that's put in prison. I really do believe that you adapt quickly and you have to survive, right? But if all the people that know me, and please God, all the people that that will see this and listen to this when we get out, people, and all the people that I've reconnected with now, have all said to me, Jacob, we always knew you were like the biggest softie, and you're always the loveliest boy, and you always had the biggest heart. And all I ever wanted to do was help people, but I just felt that I couldn't. So I committed to a life where I'd given up on myself. And when you hate yourself, it's easier to hate other people if you hate yourself.
But
so it's easier
you
to.
started to shed that persona. What did you do to
It was,
begin to put that into use?
yeah.
I think the main thing that honestly helped me was when I was in the flat. I'd been out of prison for a year. The girl that I was with had left me, and I remember sitting there and thinking, I need to feel some kind of connection with a man. Like, I've been gay my whole life. I've never kissed a guy. I've never been with a guy. And maybe that connection is what is hurting, what that lack of connection is also contributing to my pain. Because when you genuinely care for people, the toll it takes on you when you lash out on people, right? It really, really affected me for every minute by minute, day by day. Of course, it affected the people that I was acting out on more, right? And I get that. But I wanted it. I wanted a connection. Of course I did. I yearned for it my whole life. I made the decision, fuck it, I'm gonna go for it. So I had no way of knowing how to navigate that world, right? What do you do as a closeted gay guy who's acts like they're the toughest guy in the world?
So
He's got tattoos
how
everywhere.
did you learn to deal with that?
I In terms of okay, where am I going to go to meet a guy? I can't just rock up to Soho in case anyone sees me and says, "What's Jake? Why is Jacob there?" Right? So I just looked on my phone and thought, how can I see a guy? And I went on to downloaded these apps, right, that I didn't know how they worked. And I couldn't put my face on the app. So it was there's no face. And because I obviously was hiding, and I met this guy, and slept with this guy. I was 26. First time I slept with the guy. And afterwards I just felt, okay, now I know that even more solidified what I am. Okay. And it kind of gave me a little bit of hope, because when after it happened, I was like, well, I haven't disintegrated into fire, or burst into flames out of shame or anything, I haven't been exposed. um
So
So on the
it
one hand, you've now confirmed that deep inside that's who you really are, but on the
yeah, it
other
didn't need
hand,
confirmation, but yeah,
you're not willing to own it in the world.
no,
So
no
that
chance.
really meant that the possibility for meeting someone and having a relationship was not real, right? You were having quick hits.
yeah, so that was a problem in itself. As I said at the start of this, please God, a lot of people that go through or have been through the same kind of things. Maybe not all of the stuff I've been through, but certain, especially gay or whatever, people that understand and relate to what I'm saying in this part of my story, it's quite hard to, you're looking for love. I think we're all people looking for connection with people, right? That's relationships of any kind, friendships, deeper connections with people, what life's about, right? That's how I look at it. And I could never have those, because I I literally felt, okay, not only am I embarrassed and ashamed, and the shame was going day by day, it was lessening, but I felt, okay, I could get murdered if I get found out now. because I'm so deeply involved with, crime at that time, I felt that I represented my friends and the people I was involved with for what the image of being tough is, which actually brought in income for them, because a lot of the income that's made in that world is based on fear and intimidation, right? So if it comes out that I'm gay, then I felt that it would put an incredible embarrassment onto them and their relationship with me, and put them under a spotlight they didn't want to be under, and maybe, you know, question their integrity in that world. And
Let's look at that time period. You first hooked up with a guy when you were 26 or so?
yeah, and then I was hooking up nearly every other day for 8 years.
And you have been, that's 9 years ago. And it
Mhm.
was really in the last year that you finally came out fully, telling your
Yeah.
parents and your friends. So
Yeah.
during that 8 years, the beginning part of it, you were involved in a world of thuggery.
Yeah.
And there was no way you could be openly gay because it would make them question you and their own sexuality. So you had to hide yourself. But somewhere along the line, you began to switch out of that world of, you know, people who were stealing and robbing and drugs. And you began to
Mhm.
switch into what is now your profession, your career, which is helping other prisoners.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
where did that transition begin to take place? How old were you?
So I'm 34 now. I was 29. So 29, I started going online and thinking, how is there a possibility with my background, that I could go back and help, young guys and young girls to, who have been in for trouble or been in prison, and maybe help them. How could I do that with my experience? That's all I thought. I've been through this. There's a lot of people have. I've got something to offer and give back, and I'd love to do that. So I went online and I found this incredible company called Trailblazers, and you had to do an interview and go through an interview process. And then if you pass that, they give you free training. So you basically became a mentor. It's called a mentor, and you mentor prisoners. So but it was in COVID times, right? So it was online. So what it consisted of, and after the training, which took about just 9 months or so, um, I would be on a Zoom call like this, with a prisoner that had 3 months left on their sentence before they're released, and then you form a professional relationship with them, try and be a positive influence in their life, um, get to know their family if they have any, and provide a support system for them for when they get released. And then when they get released, then you would meet up with them and basically try and, make sure they're not involved in the past activity, whether it be gangs or crime or drugs or whatever it is.
It's almost like a humane parole officer.
It's like a between a parole officer and a friend. So it's a mentor in the middle, right? Because, for instance, I could go to the pub with them and sit with them, but I couldn't drink with them.
So
So
let's
there's
look at the fact that you did that for 4 years or so.
No. So what I did that that was for just over 4 years ago, and I did that online because, as I said, it was through the COVID time, and then I continued to do that. Um, and then as that was happening, I completely moved out of all, the crime and all the negative, out completely, because I had suddenly gone from never seeing a guy, never doing anything positive in crime, doing drugs, to actually mentoring people every single day, Monday to Friday, seeing guys, albeit in secret. So it kind of thawed me out, if that makes sense.
all the
Well, it
goodness.
began to enable you to envision the possibility that you could
Yeah.
be with someone because now you're no longer hiding your life from everybody you know.
Yeah, and also as I've stepped away from the crime, I've distanced myself, and as the days and the months and the years went by, I'm not involved with a lot of the negative people I was involved with, and the activities I was. So it's given me hope and a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, maybe soon I could possibly come out. Maybe there's, and as you mature, in life, we all have different stages of how we think about things and how we act. And I was growing up and I was realizing, I think it's important to say that there's a lot of kids, a lot of young men and women that are gay, millions, right? And there's a loads of people that are only children, and loads of people that are adopted. Um, and those things are a blessing. Those things are a gift and a privilege. And for me to, you know, it's emotional to talk about now. The damage that was caused, obviously we've had to, briefly go through things, but you know, the people that I hurt along the way, there's a lot of people I've gone to, and looked them in the eyes and given them a hug and cried to them and apologized and begged for their forgiveness. And 95% of them have given me a hug back and accepted my apology. 5% haven't. But I'm not the only person that I hurt along the way. My
I think
family.
what you're saying is that a lot of what you experienced and the life you lived was horrible, but
Yeah. And also,
it gave you an insight and an ability to empathize with others because you have been there and have escaped or emerged relatively
yeah, yeah,
unscathed. So now
yeah.
you
Look,
can go back and give
yeah,
advice to people who are going through what you went through.
Yeah, so look, it was many, many years of living a nightmare, right? Internally and externally. But at the same time, I not everyone made who's gay and closeted goes out and beats people up and hits people and ends up, doing these things. So I don't want the message or to be, oh, I ended up in prison and ended up stabbing someone because I was gay, because that's not real. That's not. Um, there's so many people that struggle with things, they don't act and take it out like I did, and express themselves in the way I did. And that's on me. I have to carry that, and I made those mistakes, I made those choices, and I live with them. And look, ultimately, I made a promise to myself, as you asked me a few years ago. I got to spend the rest of my life making it up to myself, to my family, and to all the people I hurt along the way, and ultimately being myself, which I know is a good person. So being yourself in life is some people find it easy, right? For me, I found it difficult my whole life being myself. It's the easiest, should be the easiest thing in the world, but for me, it was the hardest. And I believe that I'm a good human being ultimately, that made a million dumb, stupid, bad choices, and I've got something to offer. And helping people allowed me to heal and then help myself by finally saying to my family and to my close friends, okay, I'm gay, and maybe explains a little bit of the whirlwind that was. Um, and I'm sorry if I used that anger of being shame of being like who I am and took out on you or put you under stress or whatever in all those years. And this is who I am. And um, that's it. And it was difficult, obviously, telling people after all those years, but it was incredibly liberating, and it changed my life. And it's been the best year of my life. And
Well,
now,
I can see where the apologies and the exoneration and everything are critical. But I'm most curious about when and how you finally made the decision to own up to yourself and to your parents and to the world. That's a huge step. When did that
I
happen,
think
and how did you reach that stage?
I think it was 2 years ago. So those years when I was, deep in drugs, and before I did the mentoring and stepped out of that world, that really affected my relationship with my mum and dad, because my family is very small and there's no brothers and sisters. It was my mum and dad adopted me. And from 13, as we've been through, it was a nightmare. It was absolute shit for them the whole time. And then I got out of prison and they helped me, with my flat, with the rent a lot for a long time. And they really did that on the basis of, look, Jacob's been through a lot. Let's see him, change his life around now. All right. And then when I got in even more trouble, we didn't talk for 4 or 5 years. And then one day I got a phone call 2 years ago from my mum saying, your father has had a fall. She found him unconscious in the bedroom with blood against the wall, and he'd passed out and he'd fallen, and the ambulance were there. She goes, I need you. I need your help. She's an elderly woman on her own, and she needed me to come over and support her, obviously, with my dad. And we hadn't talked in years. Well, as they were, obviously, she was incredibly angry with me, and she felt that she couldn't, communicate with me as how I was at that time, but she had every right to feel like that. So in that moment when she called me and I came round, I was ready because I was doing the mentoring and I had stepped back from all the stuff, the negative stuff I was involved with. I had to step up as a human being for my family and as a son, which I hadn't ever really done, to be honest. You know, um,
And now I
yeah.
believe you see your dad who's experiencing dementia every day. Is that correct?
when I got the phone call from my mum, from that day, we found out that my dad had dementia, which obviously gets worse. And it's an incredibly hard thing to deal with. And I had to become like a team with my mum, right? A team with me, my mum, and my dad, because there's no one else. And yeah, it's been sad and heartbreaking, but at the same time, it's been an incredible privilege and gift to be able to be in their lives and be able to help them. And I'm there with them every single day. I speak to my mum and dad every single day. I'm there. We was there for Christmas with them. It's been 2 years, and me and my mum were, doing our absolute best for my dad. My relationship with my family is incredible. My mum's like my best friend. They both know that I'm gay. They're both fully supportive. I look after my dad. I see him every single day. I see my mum every day, and we move forward as a family, and we're trying to, cope with it as best as we can. Sometimes it's absolutely fucking heartbreaking. Um, but that's life. That's a part of life. And as I said, I look at it in some ways as an incredible honor that I get to be there to help my dad get dressed and, cook for him and sit with him and watch football with him and put him to bed and be able to support my mum and make her life as easy as I can. So with doing that and being out as myself and gay and having a career being a mentor, helping guys, as I said, young kids from 15 to 18, um, get out of prison and change their lives, I think I'm on the right track.
No, it's
And
an incredible story of redemption. The one,
yeah.
the one thing we still have yet to cover sufficiently, I think, is
Mhm.
when and how and why you actually made the decision to tell people you were gay and to own it.
Yeah, I think I got to the point where I just couldn't. I think it was two things. I think the stress, the anxiety it caused me was affecting every part of my life, hiding. It just really, 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 it wore me down. It had been 9 years of hiding consistently, just casual sex all the time, um, a fear of being outed and exposed and mocked and humiliated and all these kind of things, and you just get tired. I think I just got tired of lying and hiding, and it deeply upset me. You know.
So
I
when
always had
when
this.
was that, and how did you tell them?
Um, so I made the decision about 10 months ago that I made the decision like a year and a half ago that I was going to come out, and it took me another 9 months to, get the courage to do it. And I think my mum was the last person I ended up telling, because I kept texting her saying, "Mum, I need to see you. I want to sit down with you and talk to you." And she was, really busy with my dad and nurses and medication, all these stuff. So she was so busy. She was like, "Okay, at the end of the week, at the end of the week." And in that period of time, I told my aunties and my best family friends and my friends and my best friends, and I went to see them, and I ended up speaking to her, probably one of the last people. And I every single person I've told has been, all the girls that I told, most of them were like, we actually thought you were. Um, there were two or three that I told, girls that I told when I was 14, that said, we've held your secret since for like 15 years, 20 years. Because there was people that I would be drunk along the way that I'd tell. Someone told me, I went up to someone at a wedding and I was like, I'm gay, and they just looked at me like, what? And I just walked off. And I don't even remember saying that. So there was like little whispers about, um but I'd kind of, over the years, put that cloak of fake masculinity, or whatever I thought was the right image, to kind of cloak myself off people asking me. But when I came up, people did think that maybe that was the case anyway, which goes to show you think you're hiding, and maybe you're not doing as well as you think, even deep down.
So how do you feel now about
Um,
about the prospects of meeting someone and having a relationship?
I feel scared and excited, and I'm 34, so I'm young, but I'm old. Like I've lived quite a packed life, and some days I feel like, oh fuck it, I don't have the energy, to, because apparently love's like really, really stressful and taxing and intense and incredible, and all these things people tell me, and all these people say it, that how they've, all the stuff they've gone through when they're in love, and all the things I see in movies and all the songs, right? All these amazing pieces of art, all based on love. I'm thinking, shit, I've got to go through that. Sometimes you don't want to go through all that, because life's tough enough as it is. But I, overall, I can't wait. I can't wait to meet someone, please God, that happens. And at the end of the day, I know it sounds really corny, but when you lose people you love, and when they're taken away from you, and you see people that you love, kind of disintegrate in front of your eyes, and you've lived a life where you never allowed yourself to love yourself, which basically meant you didn't have love in your life, because you hated everyone and you hated yourself. When that passes and you allow yourself to interact and have real connections with people, you realize that's the most important thing in the world. So if I could have the opportunity to share my life with someone who loves me for actually who I am, which no one's really ever seen, then that would be the biggest gift in the world, I think.
I think that's a good note to close on. Um,
yeah,
you have an optimistic outlook, at the same time an understandable fear,
Yeah.
because it's a huge step, and
mhm,
trusting someone else and having them trust you is the antithesis of everything you live for the first part of your life.
of
So
course.
I think you're on the right path, and obviously wish you the best of luck in getting further along the track you're already on, and that your father does as well as possible in his remaining time.
Thank you.
you'd like to add for the audience?
Not really. I just want to obviously thank you for the opportunity to get across my story. I hope that I've, expressed myself okay. It's my first podcast I've ever done. So it's quite nerve-wracking, and it's easy to, there's a lot of the story that I'm not proud of. So you're kind of battling with yourself of, fuck it, should I say, the full truth? But you've got to. There's no point in life at this stage to not say the whole thing. And that's the only way you can help. That's the only way you can really help people. You can't do it by bullshitting or half saying it. The story
Well,
is the story.
we're on New Year's Eve day, and it's an
Right.
appropriate time to look at turning a new leaf.
Yeah. And the last thing I'd like to say, just to anyone listening, I went back and forth, and should I do this? And is it, is my story even significant? Why am I important to give an hour of talking about my life when people go through a million times worse and everyone's got their own shit? But I do think that I know how deeply I suffered internally, and how many lives I affected in a negative way in the past, based purely on my inability and fear and shame of dealing with my identity. I experienced that firsthand, and that means I'm not the only one. I'm not special in that sense. There's got to be a lot of people that are dealing with it now, and or have dealt with it in the past. And if my story can even say to one or two people, if I was, from a good home, good family, good education, got all the chances in the world, and I ended up in gangs, in shootouts, and stabbings, and doing over half a decade in the worst prisons, just based on, not being able to deal with my sexuality, then it can really ruin lives. And it's important to kind of flag that and put a spotlight on that, and hopefully give people the bravery and the courage and the belief that they can be who you want to be in this life. And your people will be there for you, and if they're not, then they're not your people anyway. And there's always a community. Like, you've been incredible for me, giving me this platform. There's always people there that share similarities in your story, and if they don't share any similarities, they have empathy and understanding with your story, and people aren't alone. So I would just say to people to be yourself and to not be scared. And even if you are scared, you still got to be yourself, because life's too short, and you got to be you, and you've got to try and be happy. And that's the whole point of this whole thing we're trying to do every single day.
Well, congratulations on the distance you've traveled, and good luck with the distance you still have to move.
Thank you.
I'm really honored to have had the opportunity to introduce your story to the world, and obviously
Thank you.
we'll stay in touch.
We will. And when I meet someone, you can come to the wedding.
All righty. Okay. Have a happy new year, Jacob.
Happy New Year. God bless you.